Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Haunted House, brought to us by Atari. Haunted House, released in 1982, is definitely one of the first examples of a horror-based video game. You could even say it's one of the first survival horror games. The gameplay for Haunted House is quite simple. Your goal is to travel through a 4-story house, watching out for enemies along the way, collecting 3 pieces of an urn, and then going back through the entrance. However, unlike many games on the system, it actually does have an end. The game also features 9 different difficulties for you to play through. In this run of Haunted House, I'm going to be playing through the game 3 times. Once on the easiest, then one of the difficulties in the middle, and finally the hardest difficulty. So here we go with Haunted House for the Atari 2600. On the level 1 difficulty, you can see the entire house lit up. You still have to use the candle object by pressing the button in order to illuminate the area around you in order to find items. Even if you walk over an item while unilluminated, you won't pick it up unless you turn on your light. In the first difficulty, there's also 3 enemies, 1 of each type. There are ghosts, there are tarantulas, and there are bats. While all of them run into you, causing you to lose 1 health, which you can see is located in the lower right corner. However, on the higher difficulties, these will keep multiplying and you'll have to deal with multiple enemies at once, and the bad enemies become especially annoying because they'll take your items and move them somewhere else. And yep, I've already completed the game 1 time, so it's time to move on to the higher difficulties. I'm going to play on difficulty 4 now. All the outline of the house, as you can see, is now completely dark. The layout of the house has changed up a little bit, and now there are plenty of locked doors around. In order to get through locked corridors, you'll have to find the key. You can use the key to go through, but if you drop the key, you won't be able to unlock the doors again. Another item that you can find throughout the game is the wand. If you have the wand, all enemies will try to run away from you, going off screen. This is essential to know where this is, especially on higher difficulties, as you can use this when you're being chased by multiple enemies, as the enemies will actually chase you through different floors and through the walls. You can grab the wand and push those enemies away, and then continue searching the house. All the items in the game are scattered throughout the mansion completely randomly each time you play. The only exception being on difficulties 2 and 3, the key that you're going to need to unlock doors will appear right near the beginning of the game. You can pay attention to the bottom of the screen not only to tell how much health you have left, what item you have equipped, but also currently what floor you're on, with each of the floors not only being represented by a number, but also by the color of the bar at the bottom. If an enemy runs into you, you lose 1 health, and if you lose all your health, the game's over and you have to start over again. I think one of the most iconic things about Haunted House is the simplicity of it. The fact you only get to see your character, just your floating eyes, as you're traveling along this mansion trying to find the pieces of Zachary Graves' urn in order to escape. While there was no sequel directly on the Atari 2600, there was a sequel made for the Atari Flashback console released in the early 2000s, as well as a sequel that was released for the Nintendo Wii and Xbox Live in 2010. After collecting all the pieces of the urn on our quest here, we go back to the exit and complete our second quest. For our third and final run of the game, I'm going to be playing on the 9th difficulty, known as the Ultimate Haunted House. Basically, it is the same as level 8's difficulty, but the house is set up differently, aka different locked doors. All 5 creatures can now chase you from room to room, even through locked doors. So, it's a real challenge to try to find all the pieces and be able to get them all together and escape. One of the big keys for the Ultimate Haunted House is to make sure that you find the wand. Having the wand, especially getting it early like I was able to here, will help me out and keep a lot of the enemies at bay. The locked doors are a real nuisance. Pretty much every time you go up a staircase, almost all the doors around you are pretty much going to be locked, so it's really hard to navigate your first couple of times through this haunted house. One thing I didn't mention is there are a couple of difficulty switches you can mess with as well that will actually turn off the lightning, though I do think the lightning gives you just a little bit of help that is needed in order to kind of see and get your bearings a bit. The enemies are absolutely relentless on the higher difficulties, and since you cannot have the light illuminated during areas where the enemies currently are, it can be very hard to even find if there's any item in a room. Many times you may find yourself being chased by an enemy out of a room and forget to go back into that previous room to see if you missed any items. One thing that I can recommend is finding the wand, and then when you find pieces of the urn, figure out where the first urn piece is and how to get back to it. Then if you find another piece of the urn, take that one back to the other one and quickly go back and get the wand. Keep the wand with you instead of carrying the urn pieces with you throughout the mansion. This way, in case a bad enemy ends up running into you, he'll end up taking the wand and not end up taking the urn. And even if the urn is complete and you have all 3 pieces, the bat will move that around as well. Since all the items are scattered around randomly, your game length will depend, of course, on how quickly you're able to find the items. Sometimes the game is nice and actually can bundle some of the items pretty close together, and other times you'll have to travel for quite a long time before you're able to find them all. Once you're able to get all the pieces though, we return back to the end for one last time of completing the mansion, and with that, that'll wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.